understand what I've become.
We're once again catching up with Prototype. And I'm sitting here with the marketing director, Chris, and tell us a little bit about Prototype.
Sure. Prototype is an open-world action game. It's set in 2008, and you play a biological weapon, a shapeshifter called Alex Mercer, who is on a desperate mission to understand why he has these incredible powers and who is behind the military and the infection spreading across New York City, and why are they trying to kill and basically get him under control. So essentially it's kind of an open world thriller based around a conspiracy storyline in an open world setting.
We've covered this game a couple of times before. The last time was at GDC. What's new in this version?
In this version, basically, we're showing some of the new powers, some of the new enemy types. For example, the infected forces. We haven't really shown these guys yet, and they are the second faction in the game that you'll be battling. The infected basically have a number of levels of infected. The lowest level is infected level 1, and they're basically a humanoid type, almost like a 28 Days Later type crazed humanoid infected, who by themselves aren't much of a threat, but when they're in massive numbers, like they are in our demo, they become a larger threat to Alex, and so he'll need to use all of his powers to basically get them under control. We're also showing things like Devastator powers, which basically, once you overcharge Alex, you can launch these massive attacks that just destroy an entire area, but taking out vehicles, taking out tanks, taking out infected in one shot. So we're really, really pleased with the way the powers are progressing in the game. Plus, of course, it's always fun showing the different ways you can play a mission. You can play with outright attack, or you can play with using disguise and deception to basically finish a mission in a very clever way that has minimal attention from the military. Or you can decide to get your claws out and basically just rip up the city, which means it's going to be more like an action film, like a Jerry Bruckheimer type action film, but it's more challenging. So it's up to the player how they want to play the game.
It seems a lot of work has gone into these disguises and absorbing enemies. How will you teach players who often go for the direct approach with the guns all out blazing? How will you teach them to play the game in these ways?
Well, each mission, as the missions begin from mission 1 onwards, the missions are designed to train and educate the player as to the benefits and why it's helpful for them to use disguise. Plus, of course, they have a life bar. You're not invulnerable in this game, so you very quickly learn that you're not going to be able to take on 5 helicopters and 3 tanks and a whole army of infected without using disguise. So essentially, we use the missions as like a training ground to teach players the best possible way to approach a mission. But saying that, if players want to play the game and the mission the way they want, we're saying you can do that. There are no handcuffs. They can totally do it the way that they want to actually play the mission.
You've chosen New York as a setting for the game, and when we look at games coming out this year, we have GTA 4 is in New York, we have Alone in the Dark in New York, right. You have Ghostbusters 2 next door in New York. Why is New York such a great setting for a game?
It's a very good question. I think because it's a very iconic city, and when you look at New York from a distance, like even in a shot like this, it just looks like a city with 1,000 stories to tell. That you can imagine yourself having so many adventures in New York just by looking at a photo of the place. So when we can actually put New York into a video game, it's our chance to tell just one story, the story of Alex Mercer. Also, we love New York because it's obviously famous. Everyone understands what it looks like. If we set the game on Mars, well, no one's been to Mars, so yes, we could have our own vision of Mars, but people could not really relate to it because they haven't seen it themselves in photographs over their life. But because New York is so familiar, it means that when we can get Alex Mercer into this environment and have the infected and have some crazy stuff begin to happen, it's set against a very known and realistic backdrop. So that difference is quite interesting and jarring to see. It's quite scary to see something very familiar in such a crazed state. And so we love that fact that we have reality plus one fantastic element kind of grinding together.
The Council of New York sort of spoke negatively about GTA 4. Are you afraid that they will freak out when they see all the bloodshed you are doing in their city?
Well, basically, we hope so. No, I'm kidding. Essentially, you know, our game, we're approaching as an open-world action thriller. You know, our last game was Hulk: Ultimate Destruction. You know, we come from a pedigree of like over-the-top action. So I think, you know, we're obviously making a lot of strides to make sure that New York City and what you do in New York City is primarily you against the infected and you against the military. So that, yes, there are civilians in the game, but the benefits and the rewards come from engaging the real enemies, which is the infected and the military. And so essentially, you know, we feel like we've got a good balance here. You know, we aren't destroying New York. The character's not basically taking the Statue of Liberty and throwing it around. It's not like Cloverfield in that way. We're quite different. So I think we've got a good balance, basically, of a meaningful story that takes place in a really exciting city that I think, personally, avoids a lot of the issues that some of our other games have had, or some of our competitors' games have had, and some of the themes in those games we basically are staying very clear of. So we're all about really outright action, kind of like in a Jerry Bruckheimer type film.
With the factions you were introducing today, it looks like you got a good setup for some online multiplayer matches. How is the online bit going?
Well, basically, we had the recent announcement. We basically decided to put all our effort and concentration just on single player. So there'll be no online mode for Prototype 1. I mean, we're evaluating it. If we get some lucky breaks over the next few months, you know, we're going to continue to see what's maybe possible. But right now, our focus is to put every piece of energy from the development team into perfecting and getting the single-player game perfect and making it a great experience. So that's our focus for this first game, and hopefully, you know, obviously with the importance of online and the growing online console installed base, we'd love to see like a sequel have a large online feature set.